Miss Combos with Laura Newseth. Yahoo! Welcome back to Miss Combos with Laura Newseth. I am Laura Newseth, and in today's video, I'm going to be discussing Valentine's Day, White Day, and gender identity in Japan. So over the weekend, I had made some tweets after I posted my reaction video on the latest White Day cards. And if you watched that video, you know that I really did enjoy those cards. I actually really loved the way that the artist portrayed masculinity in these cards in a much different way to what we've seen in the past. So in that video, I also explained a little bit more about the context of White Day as a holiday in Japan, but in the context of Twitter, when I made these posts, it did land on people's pages who might not be all that familiar with my type of card analysis and the way I do look back to historical references, mythology, art as well, and analyze cards in a different way than other fans do. And if that was the case and I got misinterpreted, it is my fault that my words weren't able to convey and properly explain things. So for that, I do apologize if you did come across these tweets and you thought, hey, like something's not quite right. Maybe I'm missing some sort of context, or maybe she sounds rude. It is very challenging to be eloquent and also explain yourself on Twitter when you are limited on characters, and also when you have a lot of people jumping into the conversation and you're trying to keep up with different responses and things just don't start aligning correctly. So I do want to take the time to, first of all, apologize if you did read those tweets and you were kind of confused about the whole conversation. And also, it's definitely a learning experience for me that I need to be more self-aware that the things that I do put out on Twitter may reach an audience that is not familiar with my type of analysis and may not have the full knowledge of the historical and cultural references that I do use when looking at these cards. So I want to use this video to talk about the references a little bit more, also explain myself more properly, and maybe you can learn a thing or two about Japanese culture, maybe some of their gender norms, or just become more familiar with some history that you might not know. I don't know, but like I really do enjoy the cards in Project Sekai, and I've enjoyed analyzing them quite a lot in this channel since I started last summer, and I hope to continue to do that because it makes me very happy to see how the artists do use these cards to tell a story in themselves. Like they say so much about the holiday if they're portraying that, about the character and how they're feeling at that time. So I really do find these cards in the game, as like simplistic as they are, they're just gacha cards. They are quite important to the game. And not only that, the artists do put a lot of thought and effort into everything in the card, from the lighting to their facial expressions, their body language, the outfits. Like there's so much thought put into these cards and so much symbolism at times that some people might not catch everything. Even myself, sometimes I get people commenting in my video saying like, oh, you forgot this, or I noticed this detail that you completely missed out. And that's part of the conversation that I've enjoyed a lot by doing these card analysis, like having this discourse about the characters' motivations, how they're feeling at this time, and also just the artwork itself, because honestly, the artwork in Project Sekai, when I compare it to other rhythm games, it's stunning. It's so beautiful, so detailed, and so powerful at times that I feel like doing these card analysis is like the least I can do to show my appreciation to these artists. So let's begin by talking a little bit about White Day as a holiday in Japan. So the origins of White Day actually began quite recent if we look at history. It began in 1978 when a company saw an opportunity to market basically the reverse of Valentine's Day. So while Valentine's Day is a holiday where females have to gift chocolate to the males that they're interested, he wanted a holiday that would be the reverse. So men would reciprocate that gift to women. So yes, both holidays do revolve around consumerism and gifting. They don't have to do anything with knighthood or medieval Europe because this was created in Japan by a company who saw the opportunity to make more money. And in fact, the popularity of White Day in present day Japan has not been super great because a lot of men just are getting tired of all the pressure and expectations to give something good to the woman who gifted them chocolates back a month earlier on Valentine's Day. I mean, the quote here in this Time magazine article, I'm fed up with being told that I need to buy chocolates or something else for my wife, that kind of gives you an idea of the attitudes towards White Day in present day Japan. And you might be thinking, what kind of expectations might be put upon people on Valentine's Day and White Day? Because here in the West, I mean, you can literally just give a little Valentine's Day card that you buy from the drugstore, and that counts as you trying to be caring and wanting to give something out of good faith to friends or maybe someone that you're interested romantically. Well, in Japan, each gift has its own meaning. You have giri choco, which is roughly translated to obligation chocolate. And this is what you would give to like your classmates, like work colleagues. It's just to say, hey, happy Valentine's Day. And then you have honmei choco, which would translate to homemade chocolate. And that is given to your significant other or someone that you're interested romantically because you put like love and care to actually make homemade chocolate. I think one of my favorite examples of the pressures that go along with Valentine's Day on women comes from one of my favorite manga and anime, Kimi ni Toroke, where you do see Sawako stressing out making these homemade chocolates, but then she makes a bag specifically for Kasehaya, who she's interested romantically. And although the honmei choco that she made kind of was also giri choco, which was the obligation chocolate that she gave to her classmates, her friends, her teachers, that one special bag for Kasehaya held a lot of significance to her. And in the context of the gift giving, that homemade choco that Sawako had made for Kasehaya would be the equivalent of confessing to Kasehaya that she is interested romantically. So when I'm trying to explain that Valentine's Day is a female holiday in Japan, it is because of the expectations put on females to gift chocolates to specific people in their life, whether it be their classmates, co-workers, significant other, or someone that they're interested in. Japanese society puts that pressure on females on Valentine's Day. And in the case of Kimi ni Toroke, Sawako was unable to give that homemade choco to Kasehaya because at this point in the plot, she just wasn't ready to confess her feelings to Kasehaya because of the implications that Japanese society has on each and every single type of chocolate that you can possibly give to someone on Valentine's Day. So now moving on to White Day, just like Valentine's Day, each and every single possibility of gift giving does have its own implications, but White Day, which is celebrated just 1 month after Valentine's Day on March 14th, is the male's turn to reciprocate that gift. So here we have some of the gift meaning. So if a man gives a cookie, he's basically telling the woman that he just wants to be friends. If they're gifting candy, it means that they like them. If they're gifting marshmallows, which I mean, the white and White Day actually came from the marshmallows, which is quite funny if you think about it, because it means that they're rejecting the feelings of the woman. So I don't know what's up with that, but yes, they're basically rejecting you if they gift you marshmallows. And apparently if they're gifting you gummies, they really do not like you at all. So when I'm saying that White Day is a male holiday and Valentine's Day is the female holiday, that's because of the way Japanese society celebrates these holidays and the pressures that they put on females and males in each respective holiday. And I'm not saying that to be misogynistic or just reduce everything to male and female, but we do have to remember that Project Sekai and Japanese media comes from Japan with Japanese customs. And Japan as a country is relatively conservative. And when I say conservative, I don't mean MAGA, American conservative. When I say conservative in Japanese terms, it means that there are social expectations for men and women, and there is pressure to conform to traditional patterns of behavior as well as gender norms. I mean, this is still the society that for media, you have things marketed specifically to men in shonen and seinen magazines, and specific media for women in shoujo and josei magazines. So Japanese society is still pretty divided between what's for males and what's for females. There's different expectations for both genders. And this is not saying that other genders don't exist. It's just Japanese society at this point in time. Of course, there's a lot of advocacy from LGBTQIA people in Japan and societies and groups over there. But Japanese society itself, I mean, gay marriage is still not legalized in Japan. So their landscape when it comes to queer issues as well as gender issues is quite different from other countries, even the US. So I just wanted to give that perspective and knowledge about, some of their gender norms as well as the holidays of Valentine's Day and White Day as they correlate to their society. So now knowing that Valentine's Day in Japanese society is heavily tied to femininity and just females gift giving that holiday, when we look at the cards from past Valentine's Day events, I mean, the first 3 Valentine's Day events, the theme was pretty safe and pretty feminine and just very Valentine's Day. You had a lot of chocolate motifs, lots of ruffles and girly and feminine things. And overall, they're quite cute cards. I mean, this is year 1 right here. Year 2 has very similar motifs. We got chocolates and roses and kanade literally gifting you chocolates. So they're just, very safe and predictable cards as they relate to the theme itself. There's no second guessing when it comes to the theme. Now, year 3 of the Valentine's Day cards, again, pretty safe. You still have the chocolates, you have the heart motifs, but then you have the addition of Toya, who's a boy, not a girl in a Valentine's Day set. And you might be wondering, what is he even doing here when this holiday is supposed to be a female holiday? Well, the way he's portrayed in this card, it's not in a very stereotypical masculine way. He is still a boy. This doesn't take away from his masculinity, but he's portrayed in a very pretty way, similar to the girls in this set. His overall appearance is very soft, very delicate, and just like the girls, he's surrounded by heart motifs and he's gifting you a little lollipop. So in a way, I feel like that was the artist kind of dipping into kind of not a full gender bent of the holiday, but embracing both masculinity and femininity in Valentine's Day. So I thought it was a very interesting choice, but overall it just fit the theme really well, and it was such a cute card as well. So now let's jump over to the first White Day set, which we have the White Knights. I know this set was really popular. I really loved it as well. And in this set, we have Tsukasa, Akito, Mizuki, and Shiho as well. And the concept of a White Knight is not new and it's not unique to Project Sekai. It's actually quite a common figure in a lot of mythology as well as literature and media. Also, I did did mention on Twitter that historically speaking, knights is a title only given to men, and that is still true till this day. The female equivalent of such a noble title would be lady or dame. But this is Project Sekai, which is another form of fictional media. Of course, the artist can take creative liberty to add female characters, but in my opinion, and again, I would like to emphasize this is just my opinion and my own interpretation, I feel like the artist used these two particular female characters in a very interesting way, which I will touch on in just a little bit. But to go on about what the white knight stands for, as you might guess, with the white being the color attached to the name and also visually present in the uniforms, white is a color that symbolizes innocence and purity. And in contrast to the black knight, they're the good guys, the ones that are protecting and saving love in this case, because we're talking about White Day as a holiday and it does revolve around love. Now, one of the things that I tweeted that people really didn't like was me referring to men and knights as saviors. But the term white knight quite literally means any type of savior. It is an idiom that is used even till today. I mean, you often will hear companies and people be described as the white knight when they come in and save people. And when I did tweet, I tweeted in the context of Valentine's Day and White Day. This whole theme was them basically being the saviors of love. And that's the way I personally interpreted these cards. I mean, if I can just take a moment to analyze these cards, you have Tsukasa who's kneeling down, like basically pledging his royalty to be a good knight. Then you have Akito who's leading the army and is presented as this very courageous knight. And then you have Mizuki, who is, if we take a closer look at Mizuki's face, doesn't quite look as confident in this role as Tsukasa or Akito, but you have Shiho who does look very confident. And if we talk about Shiho specifically, we do know she is described by Colorful Palette as a tomboy. So she feels very confident in this role as the White Knight, and she's ready to go into battle. Whether we look at her facial expression or her body language, this is a person that's very confident in that role, and Shiho is quite confident in the way she handles herself and presents herself. We do know that a lot of Shiho's clothing tends to be a little bit more androgynous, not as soft and girly as some of the other female characters in Project Sekai, and also personality-wise, she's very opinionated and feels very confident having such a strong personality. So I feel like this role of the White Knight suits her really well. Now, if we look at Mizuki's card in comparison, we have a much different facial expression and also body language that is being demonstrated by Mizuki. Mizuki almost looks unsure by just looking at the facial expression, and the body language is not as confident as what we saw in Akito or even Shiho's card. This is someone that doesn't really want to go into battle. I mean, Mizuki's not even holding the sword. It's just kind of there. And I know some people might say, no, Mizuki is holding the sword, but it's not facing upwards. It's not being held like Mizuki's ready to battle. It's just kind of there, almost like rejecting this role of the White Knight. So my interpretation of Mizuki being included in this White Day card was that Mizuki was being kind of forced to conform into societal pressures. And we do know that Colorful Palette has always hinted at Mizuki's very complex gender identity. Even from the 2019 just character profile, Mizuki was the only one that did not have a gender listed. Instead, we had question marks. So even before Mizuki 5, most people assume that Mizuki was already not a cisgendered woman. Instead, there must have been something else. And we have learned through these stories that Mizuki does feel a lot safer when they get to express themselves with frilly, girly clothing. And when they do have to present and conform to society and look more masculine in a traditional sense, they don't feel confident. They feel like they're being forced to conform to the traditional gender norms that they just don't feel comfortable with. And how do we know that Mizuki likes to present themselves more feminine? Well, the actual artists from Colorful Palette have actually been pretty open about Mizuki's interests and how Mizuki feels more like Mizuki. This is straight from the Colorful Palette website, where the artist expresses that the design for this particular outfit, which is very girly and frilly, was actually designed that way. It was designed to be full of cuteness with plenty of frills and ribbons, which Mizuki likes. So they've been very open with what type of gender expression Mizuki feels the most comfortable. And we also do know what happens when Mizuki is being forced to conform and when Mizuki feels like an outsider in society. So me pointing out Mizuki's inclusion in the first White Day set, I did not mean to be transphobic. I just wanted to point out the element of including Mizuki in this set in the context of Mizuki not being quite confident about being placed into this white knight role. And I do apologize if the wording in any of my tweets led you to believe that I was being transphobic. That was definitely not my intention, and I will be more careful with the way that I choose to word. I just did not get the opportunity to fully express my thoughts and reasonings behind why I think Mizuki's inclusion in the White Day set was to illustrate that Mizuki does not feel comfortable as the role of the White Knight, along with, two masculine characters and Shiho, who feels very confident in her tomboy identity. I would never want to insult Mizuki as a character, not only because the character is honestly one of the most well-written characters in Project Sekai, but also because of the importance of having a character like Mizuki in a form of media like Project Sekai. I have been outspoken in the past that the inclusion of Mizuki and the way the storyline, has progressed within the game, it's quite progressive for Japanese media, and especially for a gacha game where a lot of people kind of dismiss the storytelling aspect in gacha games. And here you have Project Sekai making Mizu 5, which, was a story that transcended fandoms. And it honestly served such a big turning point for not only Mizuki, but also Project Sekai as a franchise, because they were not scared to dip their toes into more controversial issues. And when I say controversial, I mean in Japanese terms, because of how traditional that culture is. They fully dipped their toes in and talked about a very real scenario for a lot of trans people. Also, just going back to Mizuki presented as a white knight, one of the references that I spotted right away as someone who really likes history was Joan of Arc. And Joan of Arc is a historical figure with a lot of ties to gender identity. So when you first get presented to Joan of Arc, in many history books, they will simply present Joan of Arc as a girl that had to cross-dress as a male in order to be able to fight along the men in the army, to be basically treated as a regular soldier. So we do know from history that once Joan of Arc was discovered to be a female, Joan of Arc was persecuted because she was not a male. But many historians in current day have realized that Joan of Arc perhaps wasn't cross-dressing at all and instead was actually trans. And Joan of Arc wanted to express their gender identity as a male soldier, just to be treated as an equal to all the other male soldiers, to the point that Joan of Arc was willing to die rather than renounce and conform to French society and the Catholic Church. So I feel like that nod to Joan of Arc in Mizuki's card was very interesting, because it was Colorful Palette laying the Easter eggs and kind of letting us know that Mizuki doesn't want to conform into the white knight role. Mizuki just wants to be Mizuki and be able to express themselves however they want, whether it's with ribbons and frills or by taking up hobbies that are associated as more feminine, such as cooking or sewing. You do see a visual difference between Mizuki's facial expression and body language when she feels comfortable and at peace, as opposed to kind of being forced to conform. So that's where I was coming at with Mizuki's inclusion of White Day, and hopefully I was able to better explain myself in this segment of the video. And the two untrained cards were the first one, the untrained for the White Day card, and the second one is the latest one, which is the untrained for the Valentine's Day card. Now moving over to the second White Day set, here we have the Black Knights. And once again, that is a concept that is not new or exclusive to Project Sekai. Black Knights have been used just like White Knights in a lot of literature and media, and they're quite literally meant to be the antithesis to the White Knight. So the Black Knights are quite literally portrayed as villainous figures. They're the outcasts, they're the rebels. They don't have the best moral compass, especially when you compare it to the White Knight, who's supposed to be pure and innocent and stand for everything that's good. They're the saviors. These are the people that don't care about that, essentially. In these cards, you have Toya with a humongous dragon, kind of conjuring his dragon to do, to do the fighting for him. Then you have Rui with the sorcery and the magic, Kaito holding a gun with a very wicked smile, and then you have Miku, who is a woman. Once again, she is female, but in the context of this world building and also the medieval inspiration, she wouldn't be a typical woman that is conforming to the gender norms in even that world. She kind of looks like someone who is looting and stealing from, the town that you can see from the windows. So she quite literally does still fit the archetype of the Black Knight. Also, I would like to point out that the White Knight versus Black Knight scenario, even in Japanese media, had been done before by other series. You have Code Geass, and here you have the Black Knights in that series. And one of my favorite examples of that concept of the White Knight versus Black Knight comes from Sailor Moon, one of the series that I watched in my very formative years as a kid. So you had the White Moon Clan, which Sailor Moon belongs in, and they stand for, everything that's good and purity and innocence. And then you had the complete opposite, which was the Black Moon Clan, and they were the villains. They didn't care about doing the right thing. Where things get interesting is when you have both the White Knight and the Black Knight in the same basically White Day event. And here we have the third White Day event, which is currently running in the English server, and this is pretty much a gender bent version of what we saw in prior years and the whole White Day holiday as a whole. I know some people didn't like me using gender bent as a way to describe this set, but everything from the hair down to the tailoring of the uniforms do look more masculine. This is not saying that just by cutting someone's hair, they immediately become a boy. But it is a very strong visual characteristic and a very strong portrayal of masculine traits, like translated quite literally, as opposed to what we saw in the most recent cards where they took more symbolism and the animal horns to still display elements of the masculinity that comes from the White Day holiday, but just interpreted very, very differently. Another thing that I had tweeted in regards to the new White Day set was that I was very glad that the artist took a very different approach to interpreting masculine traits in the new set, as opposed to just chopping the girls' hairs to look more masculine. And this is not to say that I'm against women having short hair. I mean, I've chopped my hair off into a masculine looking haircut, a pixie cut, twice actually in my life. I quite enjoy the liberty of not having to conform to traditional ways to express as a female and just kind of do my own thing. I'm very much a tomboy as well in terms of my clothing style, but this is to say that I absolutely love this set, and it actually reminds me a lot of female characters in film and media that have, cross-dressed as males in order to fight and be taken seriously. One of the first films that comes to mind is Mulan, and you have that iconic scene where Mulan chops her hair off with the sword in order to blend in and pretend to be a man in order to fight alongside the other soldiers. And I mean, the iconic poster too shows the duality of feminine traits and masculine traits. And I mean, even despite the fact that Mulan did chop her hair, she was still a woman, and a very strong woman as well. Another example of this comes in Lord of the Rings. And for those of you who don't know, I am a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. And here we have Eowyn with her iconic line as she's fighting essentially the Black Knights of Middle Earth, the universe created by Tolkien himself. Like, here we have the Witch King telling Eowyn that no man can kill him. And Eowyn replies with, "I am no man," and unveils that it's a woman that wanted to kill him and proceeds to kill him. This line changed the chemistry in my brain when I first watched it as a teenager, and I still, till this day, feel so empowered when I see this scene whenever I rewatch Lord of the Rings for I don't even know what time, because I absolutely love Lord of the Rings. Another example comes from Sailor Moon once again. Sailor Uranus is the only one that has a boyish haircut. And when we first get introduced to Sailor Uranus in the anime, we are led to believe that this is a boy, because literally every single female character from Serena or Usagi to all of the other Sailor Senshi have a crush on this new boy that just appeared out of nowhere. Well, we soon find out that Sailor Uranus is actually a woman, and if you read the manga, then you know that Naoko Takeuchi, the creator of Sailor Moon, meant for Sailor Uranus to embrace both female and male qualities. In the manga, Sailor Uranus is both a girl and a guy. She has the strengths and the personalities of both genders, essentially being one of the very first examples of a gender fluid character. But this is not the only form of Japanese media that has embraced both female and male qualities. If we want to look at more modern day examples within like shoujo manga magazines, the first series that comes to mind is Prince Freya. In this series, we have the character of Freya, who's a girl from the countryside that has to cross-dress and pretend to be the prince of her kingdom that has been murdered, but they can't let the opposing side, because there's a war going on, they can't let the opposing side know that the prince has been murdered. So she chops off her hair and lives a life pretending to be the prince. And this is not to say that she's rejecting being a girl, because she's still very much a girl, and whenever she doesn't have to present a facade of being the prince, she's still Freya, the girl from the countryside. But she does learn to embrace some masculine qualities and in terms become a much stronger and courageous woman. And it's a little funny that Prince Freya is another Japanese, fictional work that also employs white knights and black knights. Here we have Freya with her white knight behind her. Another modern day example of a woman having to cross-dress in Japanese fiction is The King's Beast. And here we have a female fox-like creature that, after finding that her twin brother has been murdered inside the palace, decides to pretend to be a male to infiltrate the palace and find out who killed her brother. So in this series, although once again you see her chopping off her hair, dressing like a male, she's still a female, and she feels empowered by traits that are quite literally female traits like empathy and compassion, but she's also not scared of showing off the masculine traits like the physical strength and the courage displayed by other soldiers and warriors. So in this way, it actually reminds me a lot of the whole concept of yin and yang, that we all have feminine and masculine energies in us. And it doesn't matter whether we are male or female in the Chinese philosophy. When we embrace both sides, day and night, black and white, inhale and exhale. You learn to have more balance in your life, and you find that both of those qualities complement one another quite well, which I feel, at least in my, again, own interpretation, I really do feel like the artists in Project Sekai have been demonstrating this balance of both femininity and masculinity, especially in the White Day sets. And going back to this third White Day set, where we do have the gender bent version, you have Kanade and Ichika, who are both wearing white uniforms, signaling that they are the white knights of this set and in this universe. And then you have Mafuyu, who's wearing a black uniform, signifying that Mafuyu in this alternate universe is the Black Knight of this White Day event. And then you have Minori, who does not have neither a white or black outfit. Her outfit is a completely different color, but she almost looks like she is in a dilemma whether to become good or bad. She doesn't really know what side to take. And the way that she is holding her sword in front of her, to me, is very reminiscent of the films and media that I have consumed, from the Mulan hair cutting scene to even Yona of the Dawn cutting her hair off with a sword. Like, to me, Minori is faced with a dilemma of having to choose a side in this alternate universe. And once again, the fact that this White Day set is gender bent does not make it less feminine. Here I see both the very strong characteristics of a female, which are compassion and empathy, but also displayed with more masculine traits. And here I think the traits are much more visual than actually implied, because women can also have a lot of physical strength and emotional strength as well. So that is my take on this particular set. And if you don't agree with my own interpretation and opinions, that is completely fine. I feel like one of the beauties in analyzing art and literature is that people can interpret them any way that they want, especially with the media that they have consumed and their own life experiences. The purpose of my card reaction videos, and also if I do tweet my own opinions about cards and my interpretations, they're not to force my own interpretations onto everyone else. They're truly just there for me to express my own interpretations and, kind of go into the symbolism and the use of lighting and composition and all these things that, I've been really open. I am 35. I am college educated. I took courses on art history and comparative literature and film, and I'm very used to having to analyze art and media, and I really enjoy that. And I'm kind of sorry if it makes me sound really nerdy or quote unquote too woke, but I really enjoy doing that, and I feel like other people do enjoy hearing an analysis on art, even though in this case the art that I'm analyzing belongs to a gacha mobile rhythm game, but still it is art that has been produced by people who are inspired by other fine classical artwork, history, mythology, astrology, film, media. Like, there's so many inspirations that I can pull from any of the Project Sekai cards. And even just reading the artist interviews on the Colorful Palette website, you can really tell that they put in so much thought and effort into every single card. Everything from the composition to the lighting to the outfits, facial expressions, body language. They put in a lot of effort. So these card reaction videos that I do are just my own way to not only enjoy the game, because this makes me love the game even more, but I also want to show the appreciation from the art team, because as someone who does love art, I love going to art museums. I just really like to take the time to analyze the works in front of my eyes. Some people might think that I'm overcomplicating something as simple as cards from a gacha game, and that is completely fine. I respect your opinion, but this is just something that I enjoy doing for myself. And if these card reactions are not for you, then that is completely fine. And I respect that. And if you have opposing opinions or different interpretations, I respect that as well. I know this video was really long and I don't know how many people actually listened to the whole thing, but if you did, I really do thank you. And if you kind of got a different perspective on my own opinions and also just the artwork in the game, I just hope that you were able to maybe learn something. And I know for myself, even at my age, I still have a lot of learning to do. And I love learning about different cultures and different forms of media as well. And the Japanese culture, since I partake in a lot of the media. I love manga, I love anime, obviously love rhythm games and Vocaloid. Like there's so much of Japanese culture and society that I also have to learn for myself. I would also like to apologize for the tweets because of my wording. If my wording had been successful, I feel like more people would have understood where I was coming from, but it wasn't. And the way I worded some things caused people to make a conclusion that I was being misogynistic or transphobic, which definitely was not my intention. But again, that is on me for choosing Twitter to voice those opinions, as opposed to maybe something like a blog post where I could definitely type out an essay, or even YouTube, like this video right here. I would consider this a form of a video essay where I can more clearly express myself and also present you the references that I'm thinking of in my head whenever I'm analyzing cards. But here I can actually show you the references, whether they're historical or they're astrological or they come from other forms of media. Like I feel like I can properly express myself and my thoughts a lot better, either written or in video format. So this is where I'm going to end the video. It's been a long one already, but I hope that you got better understanding on Valentine's Day, White Day, Japanese gender norms, and also how I interpret cards as well. Maybe because I honestly have not gone through the thought process in the past, but maybe now you kind of understand a little bit. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you very soon in my next one. Bye bye!